Hey, wait, guess what? You know those DOF packs with the bug ships in them? I got
Yeah.
one. Here we go. See? Got a bug ship.
That's a very unique find.
I know, right? It's pretty cool. Pretty
You
cool.
don't, you don't get them often. You should put that on the exchange. You
I
get a
should.
whole lot
How
and you
much do you
see
think I could sell this for?
300 mil.
300 mil? Okay, people. 300 mil for my bug ship. Hello and welcome to Foundry Files, episode 35. I am Admiral Murphy.
I'm Wee Wee, and I am back.
Again. Where'd you go this time?
About 50 miles away.
Okay, so you
Anyway.
went to go pet farm animals, I guess? Are
And,
you
and
in
yes,
the country?
and yes, I heard your comments from last week.
Oh, crap.
You noticed me go off, and you did the show anyway.
Ooh.
It's good that it was good to have Raha was on here because yeah, you kind of need to come on the show. It was good having you here. I hope you enjoyed the show last
Thumbs
week.
up. He bought a
Yes.
camera for that.
I'm back.
He spent
Yeah, he
$100 to be on this show.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
100
dedication.
just for that episode.
I wish I had
I mean,
that type of
that's something. That's really something.
money. I hope I get that. Oh, you know what? That's actually interesting now that I think about it, is how am I going to shoot this on a Mac and stuff. Oh, I'll worry about that later. That just popped into my head now because I'm planning to get a Mac and change everything over. So if we get a week gap because we're testing new equipment, that might happen. But we are here this week to review a mission. Woo! But before we get into this Fed Romulan mission, I do want to plug that. So if you like the Romulans and you have a Fed Romulan, you can play this. It's a really good mission. So we will talk about it in a bit. But first of all, there is some news, so let's delve into the news segment. So there was an interview done recently with Mr. Daniel Stahl himself. You know how I said they were keeping quiet on the Foundry?
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what?
Changed a bit.
They changed a bit. They did talk about it a bit. Not as much as I would like, obviously, because I want them to just talk about it for an hour or so. Hey, Brandon, actually, you should make your podcast do that once. That'd be awesome. I approve. Just do it. Anyway, so Stahl did talk with M&G or something like that about a whole bunch of stuff, and there were two Foundry questions that we're going to hit here. So the first question was, how did he feel about the general direction of the Foundry? It's really good to hear the dev agree that this is still in beta, because, of course, one, it's labeled as a beta still in the Foundry, if you haven't noticed, and two, it really does feel like a beta. So
yeah. Did you notice though the official version on the game is actually 1.0?
Is it now?
I think it's 1.0. It might be 0.9, but I've heard, I haven't actually looked at it in quite a while.
That's not
that version
beta.
because it's something you never think. But either way, I've heard rumors that it came out beta a few months ago or something. Either way, somebody can confirm and deny that all they want, but I don't know
okay.
right
now. I'm confused. I'll have to look because I've considered in beta for now. 1.0 means it's not, and it really still is.
Anyway, so they're basically just still continuing to learn and improve on how the tools work, which makes sense really. And Neverwinter's really helped with that because Neverwinter, of course, was the thing that really focused the Foundry. Stowe was the test bed of what the Foundry is, and Neverwinter's developed it so far along, it's like double the productivity that Stowe is. And he goes on to say that it'll take longer than expected for the Stowe Foundry to be on par what we have in Neverwinter. They have on Neverwinter, and that's kind of expected considering the Foundry is basically the center point of Neverwinter, whereas Stowe, it's sort of like a really good feature that people like to use a lot of the time. It's not really a core feature, is it? That's more like space.
With Neverwinter, you run into the Foundry, whereas in Stowe, I hate to word it like this, but it is. It can be ignored because you can't find it through playing the game, and it's in a tab that's hard to find. So it's a bad way to word it, but you know what? At the end of the day, people don't know about it still. So if they could change it around to whereas in Neverwinter, you just go, "Hey, look, I ran into the Foundry." That'd be sweet. But it does worry me when they say it will take longer than expected because we've been getting it will take a bit longer for a while now. So it continues the same track record. I'm hoping that just means it's going to take us past Season 8 a bit to get you guys your new stuff, because honestly, that's what I expected. I didn't expect anything in Season 8. I expected probably early next year.
Maybe 1 or 2 features. I'm hoping sooner rather than later the return of the import feature for character creation. Because, of course, I took that out because it was broken.
Even though most of the Foundry is broken. That's the key. We work around it.
Well, to be honest, it was kind of broken as well, because you could put, like, Gorn with Orion outfits and
Gorn with really Orion bikinis. Yeah, that's broken. You
it broke the alien creator that people found about 9 months ago. That was broken.
I wouldn't want to see that. I'm pretty sure the Foundry doesn't want to make that either. I don't blame it.
That was when Haverhar managed to get Helner in the bikini, wasn't it?
Yeah, because he had pictures and stuff.
But, that was why. Basically.
One thing I do want to see in Season 8, this is the only thing I want for the Foundry, and if it's not in Season 8, I'll be upset, is that tag feature that Neverwinter got. I think we covered it last week. I don't know if you were on for that.
That's another one. That was covered last week with Hav.
Yep.
But this is something that probably needs to come in sooner rather than later. I'm hoping this will be one of the new features that will go into Stahl Foundry, one of the first ones, the next updates, but chances are it probably won't, because it's more of I'd say it's recently introduced Neverwinter, never mind Snow. So it'll probably take a while to get there.
Yeah, hopefully soon though, because that would lay a lot of the reliability people have on podcasts to find their missions. Because it's great that people are relying on us to find missions for them, but of course we only hit 1 a week. So there are thousands out there in the Foundry. So, but anyway, he also talked about something else. What did he also talk about?
The question was all its ups and downs regarding abuse, do you think you finally handle on that, or do you rather think every player and creator's responsibility to stay on the right course using the tools of the Foundry?
Admiral Bobo.
Bobo. Yeah, that's essentially the question. What he's asking me is like, is it right that the Foundry should be used in such a way as Admiral Bobo goes? What should it be used for grinding, for accolades, for that kind of thing? I think that's essentially the question they're asking. Or at least along the same lines. That's what they get the impression. But D-Stahl, reading that, he's saying basically it's a constant challenge. You can't moderate every single Foundry mission there is, because it's not possible. It's a physical impossibility.
Yeah. Unless it's brought to their attention through the report system, which seems to go unchecked.
That's why Spotlight missions came introduced as well. They wanted to highlight missions that were really good and gave great rewards, but they don't do that for every mission, so you can't create an exploit like Admiral Bobo's of War and get still like a million dilithium fleet marks, whatever you want for a normal Spotlight mission. So D-Stahl is basically saying it's a foolproof system, and there's a lot of creativity, and that can be a disadvantage.
Yeah.
So
it seems like they're basically saying there might still be some issues out there, Bobo, but it's doing okay right now. It just seems like it's not really like a firm answer. When I read this originally, it was just kind of like,
people. He's basically saying someone, or at least a bunch of people, will always find a way to abuse an automated system, and you really can't help that in MMO. It's an MMO standard, and people do that all the time. They find exploits, they find cheats, they find hacks, they find ways around things that are not supposed to happen, and that happens a lot in Stowe as well.
Yep.
So Foundry's no exception to that, unfortunately, despite how much we would like it not to be.
Yep. But anyway, that's the questions Mr. Stahl hit. Let's move on to our review for the week.
And well, welcome to the review section of this part of number 35, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Valley of the Shadows Part 1 is what we're covering this week. Just a few little points before we start. 21 players as a review, so not really.
New mission.
Yeah.
Completely new, just out of the gate.
Newish mission. It's after Legacy Romulus as well. It's a Federation Romulan mission, so it's a Romulan, but it's Federation aligned. 3.6 average star rating. 21 players.
It will go to 4. Once it gets its plays, it will get to 4.
It'll go to 4, yeah. And like I said, it's a Fed Romulan mission, and it's a part of a 3-part series. Only part 1's released at the moment, and it's a prequel to Ghosts of War series, which I think we may have mentioned before.
I know we mentioned it on the Foundry Roundtable. I probably would have mentioned it on this show. I pitched it as something that I would like to review in the future, though it is 6 parts. So if we might be reviewing it in the future. It's quite a good series. I do highly recommend it. Go check it out. But I want to hit this one. So, because it's a Fed Ramen mission. We're like, this is the first one we've heard about. So I'm like, hey, we got to check it out and see what it's about. So why don't we get the ball rolling, shall we, with story. Yep. So you are heading undercover to an alien world controlled by the Romulan Star Empire. This alien culture here that has been, quote, enslaved, they've been captured, you know. They're occupied. The world's been occupied, and it's up to you to overthrow the occupational forces of the planet, or determine if you shall. This is basically a reconnaissance mission to see if the resistance cells on that planet are worth being your ally, if Datan and the rest of the Romulan Republic should assist them. Now, I should mention that this is going to be taking place not after all the Ramen story stuff. It's taking place in between the Elachi arc and the
feature episodes.
Yeah, the feature episodes, the Freedom arc.
So that last episode, the Elachi arc, where you have to, it's the Battle of New Romulus, and the feature episodes, the one where you kill Haki, it's in between them. It's in between Vengeance and Freedom. It's literally in between them. So it's linked to that, and it's integrated into the plot line of the actual story in the game itself. Yep. So that's pretty good already.
So it is a continuation of the whole Seal plotline and stuff, so that goes into touchstoning there. But anyway, it's a good plot. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was quite interesting. Nice plot twist right off the bat, too.
Well played, yeah. Pretty logical in places.
One thing I do want to mention.
One thing you picked up on, wasn't there? Yeah.
I don't know if this is a late spoiler or not. I'm going to mention it. Be warned if it spoils the mission. Sorry. I don't think it's going to, though. Really.
It's not really, because you're going to change most of the mission inside it.
So to go onto this planet, of course, with occupying Romulan forces, you need a holo emitter to disguise you. I don't think you disguise yourself as the aliens, so this is another one I just thought of. Why don't you disguise yourself as the aliens and not Romulans?
It's an occupied planet, isn't it? So if you disguise yourself as an alien, you'll be beaten up and harassed.
Yes, yeah. You disguise yourself, but you can change it too. Okay, you shut that down, good. Because I would like these plot holes to be shot down, because I hate when we find them. But the other one is, because it involves the holo emitter. You go into a Romulan base. And of course, you were disguised earlier as just like miners or something surveying the planet.
Of course, it's running out of power because you've been using it so much, and you have to charge it.
Yeah.
The problem is where you charge it.
It's in the middle of a room.
In the middle of a Romulan mess hall
with like 20 Romulans. Now
and it's like charging.
Yep. So you charge it, and then you change your disguise in that room. Because I was waiting to say, let's go into the hallway and change our disguise. No, it's just assumed you do it in the room then. And that threw me off. I'm like, is anybody here going to notice this? So the only counter I can see to this is there are Romulans in the room using holographic disguises as well. So possibly they won't take notice to you switching.
Yeah, but even still, maybe even if there's only 1 or 2, there's still the other 18 there or 20 there that are doing actual normal things. And it's like, well, you could have at least gone into a corner or a cupboard or somewhere out of sight to do this.
Yeah. Plus, they didn't make a big deal out of those people being in holographic disguise at the time when you're switching. So it feels really weird at first. Like, I didn't even think they were holograms, but later on it's mentioned they were holographically disguised. So I'm like, oh. Yeah,
some kind of workaround, like distracting the Romulan mess or like an explosion or some kind of fire, whatever would have done to get around that, but something rather than changing it in the middle of a mess hall and hoping nobody sees you.
Oh, the people standing right next to me didn't see that. Good, let's move on. So the characters are good in this mission. Definitely I can see some potential in these guys for later on. There's a bunch you talk to, which I want to get into for dialogue in a second here. But they're not like huge and stuff like that. So, but there's definitely effort put into them. So they're not just going, here, do this.
One character that was unseen, which is related to canon as well. The son of Benjamin Sisko.
Oh yeah, that goes into touchstoning as well.
It was the what was the name of that freighter again? It was I forgot what it was now.
Was it the
But
son or was it the somebody else?
Yeah, it was the son.
Okay, I didn't know if it was a son or if it was like a relative of Yates's kid or something like that.
No, it was the son, and it was the Mark II of the freighter Cassidy flew in the show, so it's Mark II of that.
I thought they were having a daughter. Oh no, it wasn't ever said. I think it was books.
It was never said. Yeah, it could go either way, and many different fictions of Rob.
The only reason I bring that up is because I was planning to do a Deep Space Nine like movie episode thing where I was gonna make it a daughter. So just okay. I just wanted to throw that out there. Anyway, moving on. Dialogue. It was well written, but very long. There is a lot of dialogue to read here.
I mean, seriously, there is a lot of dialogue. It's almost a diplomatic mission. In fact, I would call it a diplomatic mission because the only combat, which I'll get into later, by the way, is optional, and basically the entire mission is nothing but running around, doing stuff, doing more stuff, running around more, and reading a lot of dialogue.
It's a lot.
I mean, seriously, in one map, there is like more dialogue than the rest of the mission combined.
Oh yeah, it was. I will say it was bad at this point. There's a part, and this kind of goes into gameplay here, but there's a part where you have to talk to 7 NPCs. It could immediately when I saw that pop up, I'm like, this all could be optional because it's a lot of information that's not relative to the plot. It's basically these people are going to tell you what supplies they need the Romulan Republic to give them, and it's a lot of running around to figure out what supplies they need. Why can't I tell my boss, go talk to these people or figure out? Or why can't the leader just say, this is the most important stuff we need? It just seemed like a lot of running around that base for nothing.
I think we'll expand a little bit later, but generally the dialogue, there was a lot of it. There's a lot to remember, and most of it you don't need to remember anyway. And so it's kind of unnecessary dialogue that just fills a gap for no reason. But there's like a gap that doesn't exist is being filled. It's like, why really do you have to do this?
Yeah.
There are a few points where there's alternate dialogue where you can skip most of it, but there are instances where you.
It felt sometimes too that optional dialogue did help with the story because I was glad I clicked a few of those options because I'm like, oh, this is really important for the story.
Yeah.
But it's hard to separate that out with all that's there.
That's another thing about it. There's so much dialogue, it's hard to separate which is the important point. Do you need to click on this one and hope it's a part of the story or what? There's just a lot of unnecessary dialogue which will confuse the player, thinking too much is happening. I don't know what's happening because I don't know how to distinguish what's relevant and what's not for later in the mission. And when you find out about half the things at the end, you find out about half the things the NPC said aren't relevant.
Yeah,
it's just a bit of backstory and a bit of character development which really didn't need to happen. It's just too much.
So what we're recommending here is it's great to have detail in your story. Just you might want to take another look and see what's necessary, what's not, because there is quite a bit.
It's too much.
No grammar and spelling errors. So story came in here at 8.86, and oh no, it's Wee Wee's favorite thing, but now in a 4-way.
It's a new record, tied 9th in an 8.86 with Into the Nightmare part, which is part 5 of Revo's Klingon series, Every Action Part 1, the 3-part epic story missions, and Dead Men Tell No Tales, the other Klingon mission. So we have a 4-way tie.
Yeah.
The first one we have.
I hope this.
And now I'm looking for a 5-way.
This is going to really affect our next top 10 list if this if all these missions make it to the number 9 spot. It'll be like, hey, guess what? It's not really our top 10 list. It's like the top 14. But anyway, yeah. So this is definitely a good story. If you're a story fan, you will like this mission. Now, while story may be really good, technical. It could use some improvement. There's a lot against this mission for technical, and so we're going to go into that here. That could definitely, because I will say that does detract from the mission a bit. Not as much as gameplay. Gameplay has its own issues, but technical.
I'll talk about it later as well, by the way.
Well, let's get into technical for now. The maps were good. Some of them were definitely really good. Because
really good, yeah. There's this massive town that's really.
I love that one.
It's a massive shanty town, and by the way, shanty town. I immediately thought of the PvP map, so I'm thinking if that was ever actually in the Foundry as a map, he would probably use that instead.
That'd be sweet.
But either way, he did a very good recreation of that.
Agreed.
As well, by the way.
I was kind of upset because in one of my missions, I tried to do what he did with the Romulan camp, but then the project got bugged and people fell through the floor and stuff, and I was just like, what? So I don't have that. This guy got it. I'm kind of like, damn it.
It's a good Romulan's cityscape as well. He's got in as well. Yeah, it reminds me of Breyer 3.
Yeah, it's really nice. So definitely worth checking that out. A few of the other maps, I put quotes on the customized part because I could tell that they were pre-made because I've used these maps. But the difference is he put new walls on them, which was nice. But of course, it's just walling when it comes down to it.
One map you go into, you can tell what it is because of the different variations along the side of the walls and different elements as well. It's pretty well done. Yeah, the only issue is with the map selected.
You can tell.
Either way.
But transitions were fine. I didn't have any issues with transitions. It seemed like you had plenty on each map.
Yeah, those are pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. Maybe, of course, one or two issues with too much running and too much dialogue, but the actual content of each map was pretty sufficient, actually.
Yep. So there were quite a few tech issues with this mission, though, which I let's list them right now. There were issues with the patrols, which this does. I threw this into Foundry limitations too, because I think some of that might be just Foundry limitations of the patrolling. But I think some paths were kind of maybe not placed well. Stacking groups. Again, we mentioned this in the last review, where the stacking became too much. More mobs were pulled. I especially want to quote, there's a part where there's a group patrolling around a corridor in the Romulan base. So I went to go engage them. But they were at the point where another group beams in on top of them because of a trigger. So I had then like 2 or 3 groups to deal with. Whereas if the patrol was somewhere else along the route, there wouldn't be an issue. So the patrol route definitely needs changed in that situation.
And I'll discuss the consequences of that in gameplay as well.
Yep. There was Wee-Wee's
running.
Too much running for Wee-Wee. I kind of picked up on it too, but I can tell Wee-Wee had a big issue with it.
But yeah, the map, shall we say, it's very familiar to me because it was one of the first maps I used.
Same.
It's the one with the great big long corridor. It's the generic map with a really long corridor.
And like wraps around a room and stuff.
Yeah, this links into the dialogue things we mentioned earlier.
Because you have to run.
The contacts are the opposite end of the map. You start at one end and you have to run all the way to the other end, and then go back again, and then go back again to exit the map. And it's like I ran through that corridor 3 times unnecessarily.
So that, and then there was some bad art asset placement at times. Like I know for the shanty town, one of the buildings is on a hill, and the bottom of the building is not like there, so you can see through it. Whereas if it was on the ground, you couldn't see through it because they didn't put bottoms on these buildings for art assets.
That's more like a limitation of the Foundry, isn't it?
But even if there was a bottom there, it'd be hanging off the ground, so you'd see like the bottom of the building. It looked really funky.
He did very well with what he had, but unfortunately, there were a few limitations which kind of let the map a little bit down, but not too much. It was very good nonetheless.
Yep. Art asset usage was good. It was great to see these new locations and stuff like that. It wasn't like super art asset usage to really customize some of these maps, but I definitely want to give props to creating the Romulan
I'd say a few instances of that. I mean, you put them in extremely good places, pretty logical places. You've got a few Star Empire signs in corners as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the wall I'm not entirely sure about, but the shantytown was extremely well done, and the towers reminded me of Breyer 3, like I said. So I'd say they were very good in the way they were put around.
So definitely creativity in the maps. That was cool. Especially there was definitely a wow moment when you saw that Romulan base. I was like,
definitely.
Nice. Good effects. There were some nice effects used throughout the mission, and story twists.
Couple of good story twists. One near to the beginning.
That
well,
one, I was like, oh,
which is really good.
That's where we're going with this story. Nice.
Yeah.
So that was really nice to see.
Yeah, but I just want to mention, actually, I don't think we mentioned it earlier, is the reason why you were on that thing, because we're just going to mention it up front. You have to may as well just mention it. You have to travel there on a freighter.
Not your ship.
Not your ship. Now, there are a few problems with this. One, you have a cloaking device. Now, the counter to that is the Romulans will probably develop good enough sensors, which they know they have.
That's what was thrown in the dialogue as your excuse.
Detect their own cloaking devices, which granted is pretty good. But even still,
your bridge officer does mention that in the story.
It seemed too convenient to what happened to it.
Even your bridge officer brings that up during the mission. This took us 2 extra days. Why didn't we just take our ship? We probably wouldn't have been detected, sir. And you're just like, well, it's 2 days out already. Can't really change anything now. But yeah,
and it's contradicted later on. It's like it doesn't add up entirely. You know, it just felt forced in a way that you didn't really.
I have a feeling it was just because of what happens to the freighter when you get to the planet.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the only story reason why you took it.
that's really the only reason I'd say, yeah. But
it's really cool though what happened. So I don't want to exactly say what happened.
No.
Instructions were fine. The only issue I had with instructions was at the point of where you're in the resistance base and you have to go find the door to get out.
Mm-hmm.
In the instructions, it just says the next map name or that section name. It doesn't tell you like where the door is. So I was like, I assumed usually when you get a transition, it's beaming out. It's not actually go interact with an object to move to another map. Yeah. And the problem I had was I was like, well, where's this object? I hit the M button. Nothing on the screen. So I ran around the base trying to find this object. And I was like, I assume it's one of the doors. Because I had seen a whole bunch of doors, and it was. But it was the one on the far side of the map.
Yeah.
So it's a little disorienting at first. So I didn't take off many points.
A good workaround for that is if you're gonna have a transition from an object, like a door, put a waypoint objective before you transition to it.
Or
that way
really
people
close.
Can see where it is on the map. They run to it, and then you can transition to the door. It's the most convenient thing to do, because otherwise they'll simply get lost, a bit like you did there, Murphy. I only managed to figure it out because I knew how to run back down the corridor, and I only realized I needed to go through the door because it was right in front of me.
Yeah. It was so that was a problem. I guess I should throw this in for technical too. Another problem I had is, you know, those parts where you have the dialog boxes and then you have the multiple options and you click them and then it would take you back to that screen with the multiple options. I found myself reading that dialogue off the bat that the person would say on that screen and then realizing, oh wait, I already read this. I'm back at the main screen. That's something that also kind of threw me off for a bit. Not huge, but even cryptic missions suffer from this at times where they will have a big long speech.
It does say back. So.
Shut up. I got thrown off by it because I'm used to clicking continue.
There was a lot of dialogue. Okay, I'll give it to you that there was a lot of dialogue. So to be honest, you would have been a bit disoriented by that.
Because I was too busy focused on what's important.
Yeah.
In this dialogue box that I really didn't notice that there was a back if there was a back.
And it's actually quite easy to miss the instructions in those long dialogue boxes after everything you've read as well. That's really the only thing you'll have to look up. I mean, it tells you where to go. The waypoints are in good places. They tell you which system to go to. They give you the place where you go to to get to the map through the long corridor. There is one other place where that doesn't happen though. I mean, it was exiting the main base, which is gotten out of. You have to go through a door on the opposite end of the room, but it doesn't tell you have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason I knew I had to do that was because, well, I just figured, well, he's done it before. He didn't mention it this time. I'll just simply walk straight and see what happens. And I found the door there flashing at me. So it's like, well, it could have been mentioned there, but again, either way, waypoints would have been nice.
Yep.
Would have fixed it.
And only Foundry limitation was patrols it a few times. A few of them were like, one of them I noticed when I first beamed down to that colony base is they weren't doing the walking animation. They kind of were sliding along. I'm like, okay. But it wasn't the whole group. It was like 3 of the NPCs.
The dude in the moonwalk and
yeah. And there were a few other times where it would be like one dude on patrol that got really far behind and stuff like that. Because this author uses a lot of patrols. In fact, one of the wow moments in this mission is the use of patrols towards the end. I was like, ooh, this is cool.
Yeah, especially in the little base here with the long corridor. All the patrols are in pretty good places. I mean, those patrols run really quickly. They go walking really far places. They go to the end of the map and then go back again.
Yeah.
Well, at least meet in the middle of the corridor where another patrol group goes back to where you started and comes back again. The problem with that is the room being so tight and things have been placed customized and the patrols just get lost.
Or there's a story reason why they're running to this point, but they shouldn't go back. Like that's something that is a Foundry limitation. So cryptic, we need one-way paths where at a certain step you activate it and they run to this point and then stop. We need that. So there you go, cryptic Foundry devs. That's what we need next for pathing. But anyway, technical, of course, it tied with yesterday's Tomorrow for 27th place at the score of 7.07. So there we go. Next up is gameplay. So Wee, take it away.
This should be interesting. Yeah. Start with the good old stuff, space gameplay. There is a slight problem with this. There's only one space map. And there is only one single waypoint. So without even need to saying it, space is extremely weak in this mission. And it's right at the end where you try to effectively run away. And you just move away from it. And I mean, that's it.
Yeah, space is not supposed to be a priority.
I mean, literally, that's all I have to say about space, because that's all that happened. You get up to your ship, you can either fight or bypass a few of the mobs there, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and then go to a waypoint, and then you're finished.
Yep, that's it. So there's not really, it's not really meant to be a space gameplay type of thing. It's really
Yeah,
is focused in the combat.
story-wise, it doesn't have a lot of space in this mission. But nevertheless, I mean, it was debatable whether you
Yeah,
bring your ship or not. That's an entirely different discussion. But nevertheless, space is pretty weak here. So
yeah, because space combat, let's hit that. That was,
it's just something we found. Yeah,
yeah,
can't really be helped. It's the way the system works. But space combat, the way you get to the waypoint, either bypassing it or going through it, is actually pretty interesting. There are multi-stack groups of different mobs, Tashian and Rojan. They're both on the same side, so it makes sense.
Yep.
And like I said, they're entirely optional. But they're set up in a way for them to be interesting and good enough for multiple mobs to be aggroed, forcing you to think tactically a bit. I mean, this is different to ground, which I'll get into a bit, and we've mentioned already. But in this scenario, in space, you have more control of where you're going because there's no like corridors restricting where you are. In this, you can sit out for like 10k and then aggro one mob, and then the rest will come in following it and decide. Or if you decide to go in and aggro basically every mob there, good luck to you.
Yeah.
But in other
I found
scenarios,
it kind of easy.
I thought it was pretty good with the amount of stackings, the amount of variety in the groups as well. I have to say.
I'm gonna give an alternate opinion here because I did not like this part as much. The problem I had was my Mo guy rips apart ships pretty quick, so they were weak mobs right off the bat, which are the mandatory ones you have to kill. So I ripped those apart, no sweat. I did find when I saw how many like Hirogen mobs there are that were optional that were the same, I felt that was getting kind of grindy. Like I looked at that, I go, I could see where if you draw them together, it would make it more interesting. But I didn't see, I didn't draw them together when I started that part. It's like, oh, I want to help these people out. I'll destroy a few of the ships. And then I got kind of bored really quick, and I was just like, cloak by. You deal with the ships, people. So I wasn't as impressed with the space combat.
The multi-stack was interesting, but like, to compensate, there are weaker mobs in the space. So you face things, you face like a lot of Taparos, and I think he's made it cruisers he uses. He doesn't really use a lot of Seeker frigates. It's mainly the Hunter escorts that you face with the Hirogen. They sub-nuke you all the time, which is irritating, by the way. So generally, I'd say it's pretty good. It's a good compensation, but for tactical ships like yours, Murphy, it would be pretty easy, really, with that amount of DPS you have available.
But this is a ground one, definitely.
Yeah, definitely a ground mission, and the ground gameplay was pretty functional. Now, I say that because a lot of dialogue when speaking to multiple contacts. We've mentioned this at least 3 times already. And like I said, all of them have extensive dialogues that can be difficult to follow in the story. It could have prevented the long run through the corridor 3 times. It really could have.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe just say you had to give the other side of the base.
It could have been made optional, which would have prevented going through the twice already, and you didn't need to put the doorway as the extension point. It's like, well, it just wastes time going through the long corridor rather than simply transitioning from where you were. Because you start right at the beginning, you have to go right to the end again just to go through a door.
Yeah. Maybe like have the main NPC talk to you, say, I'll meet you on the other side of the base, take some time and talk to my people, see what they need. And then you could talk to some of them on your way, or you could just go and meet up with the guy at the other side of the base. Something like that.
Yeah, it could have, the dialogue could have mentioned from the initial guy saying, like, there's a couple of people on the other side of the base, a long way away, and he could be easily seeing out the map, like, all the different eye indicators and all that kind of stuff. But either way, there's no optional things spotted, unfortunately, in this mission. If there were, I didn't really spot them at all. There is a puzzle, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, we want to get in depth on that puzzle, because it's big.
We really want to. But generally, ground, being a mainly ground-oriented mission, was moderate to improvement needed.
Yeah, it was about average, I think, what we scored. I think we both scored at 5, so it was average, nothing really shining for it, but it wasn't bad.
And I say that because ground combat, shall we say, could have been refined a lot.
Oh, man.
I mean, there are multi-stack groups together, which is fine. We mentioned this in space. Weak groups multi-stack together. That generally compensates for each other. Cruisers stacked with each other can present a bit of a problem. When you have multiple things like battleships, weaker ships,
don't bother battleships. Don't do it.
Now, like I said, normally this is a good idea, except the mobs here in this mission for ground combat stacking are high levels. So you have things like lieutenant commanders and lieutenant groups stacking together with 3 groups, and they're extremely difficult to take down without dying. Yeah. I died like 5 times at least, and I'm a medic, for goodness sake.
Yeah, that was my problem too. Is I don't know if it was class or what, because I felt like when I was taking on, there was a point where there's like 20 Romulan NPCs like clipping with each other and standing in a corner, and I'm just like, what is going on here? This was
Romulans are pretty difficult to take down, so you would find it pretty difficult in any sort of class. I don't think it's much of a class sort of a thing, because no matter what class you'd probably
I
get
felt it'd
destroyed
be
unless you have
easier
like
though if I had
extremely high DPS,
DPS.
like using mines or something. But in either scenario, you'll find yourself pretty destroyed if
Yeah.
you go in a blunter in.
So you definitely want to either spread those guys out, or if you want to really have stacked mobs, make them weaker for sure. And then watch the patrols, because of course there were other times where again accidentally groups stacked together and it became a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's hit this puzzle, because this was it was an interesting puzzle.
Yeah.
We'll say that. But
I'm just gonna say it right now, but it was ridiculously difficult to do.
Yes,
it really was. I mean, the essential part of the puzzle is you have to crack a code
to get into through a door.
Pretty standard stuff. We usually see this in type of puzzles in Foundry missions. It's pretty simple. Unfortunately, what's not simple is the way you go about it. Now, I'm going to list the 4 possibilities, which you somehow managed to get to.
So these are like the clues to guess the numbers to unlock the door. So
yeah, only one of these solutions will work, right? And it's up to you to find out who it is, right? Point number 1. The atomic weight of hydrogen and the 4 lightest noble gases rounded to the nearest integer in ascending order. Alright?
What?
Number 2. The numerical components of the first 5 moves in Carvel's Gambit as expressed in standard Stahl notation.
I don't even know 2 of those words. What is this? Is this chess?
Point number 3. The 5 largest prime numbers less than 100 in descending order. And point number 4, probably the easiest one out of them, the last 2 digits of the last 5 standard years in which the interstellar phenomenon known as the Nexus passed through or near imperial space, earliest occurrence first. How is that easiest? I'm supposed to remember any of this.
That was the easiest? Hell, if I put my mind to it, I could probably guess the 5 largest prime numbers.
39.1 years is the exact like rotation of the Nexus around the galaxy.
I don't know that. I don't know how you know it.
If you work backwards from 2371, I think was generations. 2410 hasn't happened yet, so that doesn't count. So I wouldn't bother. Then you would probably be able to get it in no time. That's why I'm saying it's easy. It's part of static law, and if you know the Nexus, then fine. Watch generations. If you don't, well, good luck in using Google.
Yeah, because okay, I do want to say people usually keep their puzzles simple, including cryptic. Heck, I even got crap on my one mission, World Lost Time, because I put a basic algebraic equation in just to mix things up. People were like, "Oh, I don't know how to do this," even though it was really simple.
Yeah.
This is not really simple. This makes people get confused. And as somebody who's now in college right now, and I get home and want to play a mission, I don't want to have more college stuff in my mission. So at first I was just like, no. Luckily, you can click through this. There are multiple options that it's pretty easy just to go click, 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 and just click your way through it. The problem is when you click the wrong one, you go back to the first question. So if you're on the 4th question and you click the wrong answer, you have to start all over and remember all the answers you put in.
Now the thing, I can see a very intellectual and very intelligent person knowing somebody who knows a lot. I can see them maybe knowing much of this, but an average player is a casual gamer. They don't want to have to really think about this. They just want to progress. And if you start using Google, they're going to lose the immediate immersion if they have that in the mission already, because what they're doing is they're progressing along, they're focused on the screen, they're focused on the mission. It's like, right, we have a code to crack, we have to get through this doorway. What do we do? What the hell are these? I have no idea what to do here.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend simplifying the puzzle. But anyway, replayability was okay. What did you think, Wee?
Now, there is an element of replayability in this mission, but it's not multipath and it's not an alternate ending. It's limited to alternate dialogue, unfortunately. I mean, there is a lot of options to choose, and it's similar to currently existing Romulan missions, so it definitely fits, because it's like in between Vengeance and the Romulan Future Episode series, part of the Romulan arc. So it's almost considered like a part of the Romulan progression you'll be going through. And so it fits perfectly in that, but there's no like alternate like decisions to make along the way that affect like optional things, because that's the most we can do right now. We can make optional like interactions and dialogue from a result of like a dialogue option that you chose, rather than simply going directly to the next point. And that's the most we can do instead of branching objectives. Unfortunately, there's none of that in this mission. It's just alternate dialogue. So it's a little disappointing, but I can see why it's like that, because it just fits with the rest of the Robin arc, and it's not too much of an issue or anything. It's just something that would have really been nice on the sideline to like fit in somewhere or something. So there's nothing much more than that, unfortunately. But generally, gameplay, it could have been improved
quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yeah. Especially the ground, where you're spending most of your time there. And that resulted in an unfortunate score of 5.22, which put it in 42nd place for gameplay. So that's extremely low down. So a lot of gameplay could be used refining in this mission, and this is a great story mission nonetheless, as long as you have the time, as it is a longer one. What the hell does that mean, Murray?
It's American. I wrote it, and it makes sense to all our American viewers. Just saying that.
Right, that's probably why it doesn't make sense. But that could use that could use some tech, this mission, and a lot of gameplay improvements.
Yeah, especially.
I mean, the story is great, with maybe one or two issues with plot holes. The tech was pretty good as well. A bit more consistency could have been used, and maybe a few things could have been cleaned up, like the long to that ridiculous corridor. Get rid of it, and the gameplay, just improve it all around.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room. Put optional things in. Put dialogue responses that trigger optional things for you to do on the sidelines. Something similar like that. That really could have really improved the mission. I mean, it scored a 7.08. We've put it in 35th, so that's just over a 7. But it's in comparison to the missions we've reviewed so far, that's pretty low down.
Yeah.
It's in the bottom 11.
Yeah. Now, of course, we don't review crummy missions most of the time, with the exception of Admiral Bobo. So it's still a decent mission. But yeah, I if you're a huge story fan and you solely want to check this mission out for story, it is a great story, so go check it out. If you're worried you will have problems with the tech and gameplay, I'd say maybe wait a bit, because the author is doing updates on this mission, so I'm hoping he'll be able to maybe go in and fix some things if he deems it necessary. Of course, we're just giving our opinions, so you never have to listen to us.
I'm hoping the next couple of weeks, or at least a couple of months, to see this mission slightly better in terms of gameplay and tech, and maybe fill one of the gaps in the plot holes or something. So he was definitely updating, because he's put like different versions in the summary log. So it's definitely being updated. This could use a lot more players, and it's definitely a mission to check out, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely deserves more play than Admiral Bobo. So
there's a good reason why it's in the top 10 for story.
Yeah,
but with 3 of the missions.
Yeah. But so that's this week's episode of Foundry Files. You can check us out on YouTube if you are subscribed there. I know we are also on tons of sites. You can check us out on iTunes. You can catch the last few episodes. I know not all of them are on iTunes, because eventually they go away for whatever reason. So make sure, if you want them saved forever as audio files, grab them as quickly as you can. But where can people email us, Mr. Wee Wee, if they want their mission played?
foundryfiles@gmail.com.
Bam! So yeah, you can do that too. I think that's it. Any other information we need to give out? I don't think so.
Drop kick well.
Yeah, drop kick well, guys. At the game.
Make sure you put your victim's name on the boot. I have a very specific person on the boot of my dropkick.
Oh, whose name was it? Do you got a picture you might want to show the people as we cut to the credits?
I might be able to fit it in.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Well, bam!
The map in question is a map very familiar to me, at least, because it was the very first map I used.
Was it the Resistance base?
It was the... Hang on, back up. You can't use that.
Why?
That's part of the story. That's a major part of the story.
That's in the description. That's what you're going for right off the bat.
Oh, fair enough. Ignore me then. Edit that bit out.
No.
Blooper.
I choose the editing. No, I will.
All right.